Coming up next on Tech News Today, Samsung spills the beans, finally, on why its batteries exploded so much. Also, Google Voice gets a much-needed update. I'm pretty happy about that. Yahoo is under the SEC spotlight for its history of hacks. The many challenges of funding a documentary on Kickstarter, and the FCC gets a new chairman. What does that mean for net neutrality? All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
Hi, this is Leo Laporte, and once again, time for Twit's audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It's only going to take a couple of minutes, really. That's all. Just go to twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. Your anonymous feedback will help us make Twit even better. And thanks for your continued support.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1689, recorded Monday, January 23rd, 2017. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send you fresh, high-quality ingredients to cook delicious meals with simple step-by-step instructions right to your door. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, work with one that has your best interest in mind. Use Rocket Mortgage for a transparent, trustworthy home loan process that's completely online at quickenloans.com/TNT. Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about some of the biggest tech news stories of the day with people who are passionate about technology. I'm Jason Howell. One person that is passionate but not passionate enough to show up is Megan Maroney. She's not here today or tomorrow. She'll be back on Wednesday. Filling her spot today is our good friend. We've had him on many times, Russ Pitts. How's it going, Russ?
Hey, it's going very well. Thank you. How are you, post Megan? Are you getting through? Do you need a hug?
We're doing okay. We're hanging in there. It feels so lonely with only one chair at this desk. But that's okay. See, it's like emptiness in here. Although we've got Berg. So as far as people in the studio, and then we got Brian, of course, technical director. So it's like not like we don't have people, but you know, it's just a lot more work without Megan here, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, I'm here for you, Jason. And if you want to put like a little stuffed animal or something in Megan's chair, and you know, and I could be that stuffed animal, and we could play that game.
I think all I really have is this bottle of water. So I'll just go ahead and put the bottle of water right here on the table. And there we go. That'll be Megan for the day.
Okay.
Brian, I can't believe you have soft, mellow piano music just at the ready. This is why Brian's awesome at his job.
Brian is great at this. And Megan, you're looking shiny today, I have to say.
Hey, why don't we do what we're here for, what anybody downloaded this show to do, which is to listen to us talk about tech news. We've got a couple of tech news stories to tackle, starting with that topic that will never go away, apparently, Samsung, which held its long-awaited Note 7 tell-all event last night. And it pretty much confirmed what the Wall Street Journal had reported last week. 2 separate battery faults led to a number of exploding Note 7 batteries. Of course, we heard all about that last year. That resulted in the recall of the smartphone. First, a design flaw that meant the battery components didn't have the room to expand and contract inside the casing, which would then, of course, lead to a short circuit. And then the second flaw, the replacement battery, because, you know, they recalled and then they reissued and, you know, did all that stuff from the separate manufacturer, saw a rapid increase in demand. You know, suddenly Samsung needed all these batteries produced. That resulted in a manufacturing defect that introduced protrusions in the batteries that also caused those batteries to explode. So 2 separate issues, both of them resulting in exploding batteries, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. Samsung is implementing a number of improvements to its testing processes to avoid a similar occurrence in the future. What is your phone, and did you ever have the Note 7? Were you ever involved in any of this?
No, I'm an iPhone user.
Right.
But I have to tell you, I did a great deal of traveling this year, and last year, I should say. And I was certainly aware of the issue, even if I hadn't followed the news, which I do. Every plane I was on since, you know, from about the middle of last year, till recently, I guess I haven't flown in the last several weeks, but like every plane I got on, they made a note to mention, you know, turn off your devices in airplane mode, right? Turn off your laptops and stow them overhead. Oh, and by the way, if you have one of the Samsung Galaxy 7 Note phones, please throw that in the garbage and stomp on it until it dies, right? Because it will explode. I think once a technology issue gets into the realm where flight attendants are aware of it, right, and they're warning airline passengers because a device may explode in midair and crash an airplane and kill everyone and everyone dies. I think that's really a sort of a mainstream level of awareness. I don't know how to gauge that. Yeah. So it was good to see Samsung really come out with the detail, the technical detail that they did with their apologies, because I honestly, I don't know if that will make a difference. I think a lot of folks, particularly people who travel, may be burned, no pun intended, on Samsung phones for some time. But if they're going to pull out of this, I think they have to do what they're doing. Just come out with all the details they can on what went wrong and why.
And thankfully, I mean, it took them a while to get there. It really seemed like it took them a while to kind of come up with this, and which was kind of strange because they had the recall and then they were like, okay, well, we've got it all figured out. They put it out. They never really knew. There was never like 100% certainty exactly why it was happening. So they enlisted the help of 3 independent kind of organizations to really go through the level of detail and scrutinize these devices to really understand exactly what was going on. That's what led to kind of their discovery of the 2 separate issues, both leading to these explosions. They say with the new inspection process, it's a new 8-point inspection process. They say it goes well beyond industry standards. They're testing durability with things like exposing their batteries to punctures and extreme temperatures to see what would happen if in fact the battery, is pushed too far and potentially explodes. Charge and discharge tests to analyze what happens when consumers are rapidly topping off the battery, because that was one of the issues that some people were wondering about is, okay, well, we've got this rapid charge happening. How is that potentially, or is it affecting these batteries? And I don't know if that necessarily had anything to do with it, but they've got that as part of the test. So they're really, and then also leakage, voltage fluctuations. They've really kind of, at least they're saying, they've changed their process, and that is going to be applied as of the Samsung Galaxy S8 going forward. So, I mean, basically, I guess when they got to the production process of the Galaxy S8, it was right about the time that they were getting the battery when all of this other stuff started happening. So it wasn't as much a matter of like undoing all their work and redoing it. It kind of fell in line time-wise so that they could do the S8 right.
Yeah, and I think you have to. I think the one thing you have to take away from this, and unfortunately, it's another ding on Samsung, but for them to come out and introduce this 8-point inspection process and announce that they're going to be doing this going forward, coupled with the fact that it took them separate investigations to figure out exactly what was going wrong, it really points to a lack of QA on their part for the 7 phone. These lithium batteries carry so much power, and it's a technology that can be so delicate. They tell you when you fly, again, I come back to flying because I'm on airplanes all the time. You don't check your lithium batteries, right? Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the trouble that Boeing was having with the 787 Dreamliner. Lithium batteries in sufficient concentrations can just spontaneously combust, right? And that's really dangerous and scary. And I think with Samsung in particular, they're trying to push the envelope to stay competitive with Apple. They really have to be pushing technology to the limit to introduce a product that's going to get people more excited about buying a Samsung phone than buying an Apple phone. And I think in this case, they just got caught in cutting corners. They didn't have the QA in place. They didn't really know how their batteries were being constructed or how the quality of the batteries being put in their phones. And then they didn't stop to do those inspections when they issued the replacement phones. Mm-hmm. That's all very bad. Mm-hmm. So, the hope would be then that they've learned their lesson and the Galaxy 8 will not explode. I guess that's a low bar, but that's still where we are, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Samsung did confirm that the Note branding is not going anywhere. So once it's time for the Note 8 to come out, it will in fact carry the Note branding. So Samsung's pretty confident that this is not going to tarnish the Note brand entirely. Maybe that's, part of Samsung just owning it. And also, that the S8, which is normally, this is the Galaxy S8 before the Note 8, even comes out a few months down the line. Normally it's shown off at Mobile World Congress. This time they're not going to be showing it off at Mobile World Congress. So that kind of hints at at least a little bit of a delay for the S8, probably as related to this. But so you might have to wait a little bit longer for your S8. Those of you thinking about getting one, there you go. Google took its sweet time, but now after literally years of negligible attention, Google Voice is getting its biggest makeover to date. Not only does the experience get a top-to-bottom design makeover with heavy doses of Google's brand and material design, including new support for photo, MMS, and yes, it was that outdated. Photo MMS was not included before. Group text messaging. There's 3D touch support for messages on the iPhone. Direct reply from notifications in Android Nougat, and a rededication to keeping the app updated on a regular basis with new features on the horizon. Of course, this makes me really happy because I'm a Google Voice user and I have been for years. And the app has just been crazy outdated, like years and years old at this point, from a design standpoint and interoperability and all that. So I'm happy to see this. I just, and correct me if I'm wrong, this just kind of murky, keeps the water murky when it comes to Google's messaging strategy, which is a little bit of everything to the point to where a consumer doesn't know where to even begin.
Yeah, Google's messaging strategy is really diluted. Even as a long-term Hangouts user, which I am, we use Google Suites for both of the companies I'm involved with. Even knowing when to use Hangout or how to use Hangout at times is really confusing. They seem to be, just in general, Google seems to be of the mind of making changes and trying new things and rapidly iterating and seeing what sticks, which generally leads to a good product. But when they're in between, what worked before and what is going to ultimately work in the future, where they have been with voice for some time, it can be very confusing for users. So this is nice to see. And I'm hoping that, I know they've been experimenting on a lot of this with Hangouts. So I'm also hoping that this means they will stop doing that for a while and at least leave Hangouts alone, because it's right where I like it now.
Yeah, well, and I mean they've said in the not too distant past that they're really trying to focus Hangouts to be more of like an enterprise solution, even though it's what I still use. Like my wife and I, that's usually how we chat is through Hangouts. So we're not using it in an enterprise scenario. I don't know if this will necessarily change it. These changes have rolled out or are rolling out to Android users right now. Hasn't hit iOS. I think it hits iOS in the coming days. And then once your version of Hangouts has been updated, at least one of the articles said once it's been updated, the web interface will actually get updated too. I'll be curious to see if that's timed that way, or maybe I misunderstood that. But no doubt about it. It's been a long time coming as far as an update for Google Voice is concerned. It gets even more confusing though when you consider the fact that Hangouts, the app itself, has Google Voice integration inside of it, and you kind of have to have both of them installed to get certain functionality. It's like they're not, they're together and they're separate, but why do you need both of them? It's just confusing. It continues to be confusing, and it continues to be.
Yeah, I think the really nice advancement that Google could be working on right now that I think would be game changing in terms of communication would be the phenomenon where every phone call, teleconference, phone call, Hangout, Skype always lasts 10 minutes longer than it needs to, because the first 10 minutes is spent with everyone trying to figure out how to make the technology work. If Google could get a wrap on that, then I think they would be in the game-changing realm there.
Duo. Maybe that's Duo with its knock knock. Yet another video messaging solution of Google's making. Maybe that's it. I don't know. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Securities and Exchange Commission is taking interest in whether Yahoo disclosed its cyber attack details swiftly enough to comply with civil securities laws. Still in early stages, the report says. The investigation seeks to determine whether investors should have been notified sooner about those intrusions. And it's noteworthy for being one of the first times the SEC has brought a case against a company for failing to disclose a cyber breach. Yahoo says it's complying with the officials in the investigation, of course, as they should. But it should also be noted that Yahoo just announced its Q4 earnings shortly before this show. They beat expectations, $1.47 billion in revenue. But they did mention here that they expect the Verizon deal to close in Q2. And originally, they had expected to close this deal in the first quarter that we're in right now. So obviously, these security issues that Yahoo has had one after another, case of really bad news last year and into this year is starting to really affect the deal of Verizon potentially buying most of Yahoo. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's hard to see how. I think it's hard to see how a company gets away from a situation like this unscathed. That was a major breach that they experienced. Something on the order
breaches,
of when you look at the numbers, it more or less equates to almost every Yahoo user had information lost as a result of this breach, and that's really hard to escape from, I think, and for them to have beaten expectations in Q4, their valuation with Verizon was more than likely not impacted by these breaches. So if I'm Verizon, I'm crying foul, and I'm going to want a better deal. And if I'm investors, I'm also crying foul. I would like to see the numbers on the amount of loss that Yahoo is going to see in Q1 versus their earnings in Q4. One has to assume it's going to be a pretty large dip. And if I'm a major stakeholder, I'm going to want some reassurance that the steps are being taken, that's not going to happen again with another company.
Yeah, for sure. Verizon is still evaluating their interest in Yahoo, as kind of alluding to what you're saying there. Obviously, it was just one thing after another, so of course they are. Another part of this, some are saying that there may have been internal cover-up, which could lead to possibly to criminal charges. There's no solid evidence of that yet, but they're looking into it. They say there's many red flags. And the 2014 breach alone, that was 500,000 customer accounts. That was disclosed in September. Some employees knew of that earlier that year, failed to alert senior executives about it, and then eventually, ultimately, everybody learned about it. So there's a lot of scrutiny being given around the timing of that all, and who knew what. And why did they not say anything? Because there was some major stuff financially happening on the back end that this could have and will drastically affect. So,
yeah, ultimately Yahoo, they've been confused for some time about what their role is, where they're going. Ultimately, the value of that company is in its eyeballs. It has a lot of media partnerships, has a lot of cross partnerships, and it has a lot of ad revenue just based on the amount of people that sort of funnel through its various portals on a day-to-day. To now learn, all of its numerous partners, potential buyer, and shareholders to now learn that all that time, or for a significant portion of that time, it was essentially just a leaky boat shedding user data to hackers. That's not great. So this could be. I don't know. I'm always the doomsayer on your program. Come on, and offer the worst case scenario, but this could be the end of the road for Yahoo. The long, winding, stumbling, confused road for Yahoo.
Yeah. Although I have to remember that at some point, is it right now that they're changing their name? Have they changed they changed their name, but what was the name? Suddenly I'm blanking. They had a name change, and so I don't know if that's going to affect the Yahoo that we talk about now, or the Yahoo that Verizon owns, or whatever. But it's going to get even more confusing.
leakyboat.
There we go. Yeah. Leaky Boaty McBoatface or something. Maybe it was something along those lines. Tidal, the hi-fi music streaming service, we actually talked about Tidal at the end of last week, owned by Jay-Z, struck a deal to sell a $200 million stake in the company to Sprint. Few details were announced today, but Sprint says it plans to offer exclusive artist content for its subscribers. Jay-Z, of course, praised the deal in a press release, saying Sprint shares Tidal's view in bringing artists closer to fans. Tidal will continue to operate as it has prior to the deal. Tidal's still kind of in control, though Sprint CEO Marcelo Clar joins Tidal's board of directors in the deal. And I couldn't figure out if this is like, if you're a Sprint subscriber, you get free Tidal service or not, because Tidal's actually a pretty pricey music service. There is no free tier. There's like a premium, which is their basic tier for $10, and then there's the hi-fi streaming tier for $20 a month. And so I don't know what this actually means. If it's just like, hey, we have an exclusive with Beyonce, and you're a Sprint subscriber, so you get it a week ahead of everybody. I don't know if it's something like that, or if it's here's some free Tidal subscription. Have you used Tidal at all? Are you impressed by what they have going on?
I haven't, and I tend to not be very experimental with music services. I'm still old school. I like to actually own music. I'll buy it instead of doing a Pandora or something like that. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm in the iPhone ecosystem, so I'm pretty much stuck with that. Well, I think this is and this may be because I guess I'm OG in that respect, but it seems like a weird deal to me. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm shopping around for carriers. That's the thing one tends to do every 2 years or 10 years. I'm not sure if the music service that may or may not be available to that is going to be a big selling point. And carriers are actually more competitive, I think, than phone makers. People can hop around phone makers. Like if I have if I'm going to get a Beats because I bought an iPhone, or if I'm going to get, somebody else because I bought a Samsung, that's more of an opportunity to experiment and fall in love than switching carriers. I don't know. It strikes me as a weird deal, but actually I was watching TV this weekend and I saw that Sprint now has commercials with the Verizon "Can You Hear Me Now" guy.
Yeah, I noticed
he's now
too.
wearing a yellow scarf, and now he's the Verizon guy. So maybe this is part of an overall push from Sprint just to get all the star power it can onto its side. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. If
he's with Sprint now, I'm guessing that they can't hear him now, or at least not as good, because Sprint coverage just isn't as good as Verizon.
Well, maybe they can hear him on Tidal.
Maybe, yeah, in high fidelity, is CD quality. I think this is a better deal for Tidal than it really is for Sprint. I'm not really sure what I don't know. I'm still trying to kind of understand the deal, I suppose. Tidal has really tried to focus on exclusives from artists to get people engaged with their service. I don't really feel like that's worked very well. I mean, it got a little bit of news a couple of times, but I don't know if it's necessarily moving a ton of subscribers over to Tidal. So I guess at this point, any deal is a good deal because they need to kind of get things moving, kind of get that momentum going. We'll see if this works. Xiaomi, the Chinese hardware manufacturer that many refer to as the Apple of China, is losing Hugo Barra. He's Xiaomi's international vice president of right around 3.5 years. Former VP of product management for Google's Android, is actually a pretty big star in the world of Android and Google before he left. Barra has been living in China, working to broaden Xiaomi's reach beyond the country and into Western markets in some cases, but says the distance from his home in Silicon Valley has taken its toll on him. Barra says he's excited to, quote, embark on a new adventure, which makes you wonder, what is this new adventure? Does he have one? Is he moving back because of one? Or is that just the elusive, I'm going to go back and see what my next chapter is, whatever. But I'm interested in this, one, because Xiaomi as a smartphone maker has done some really interesting, innovative things for low cost phones, really high design based on the cost of the device, but they're really locked to markets like China. You don't see them in the US. And two, because Hugo Barra was such a big deal for Google. It was such a high profile transition for him to lend his name to Xiaomi when he moved over there. So I'm really curious if this is a signal that Xiaomi, as we've been hearing the last year or so, has not been doing as well as it did in its first few kind of lightning startup years. So I don't know what this means for the company, but I'm curious to know what he has to follow it up with.
Yeah, like you, I've been really interested in what Xiaomi's been putting out, but the difficulty of getting that over to a U.S. market has sort of been a barrier to entry for me. What I would be, I am also curious to see what he's doing next. One has to wonder. I think we've been hearing similar things about Apple as we've been hearing about Xiaomi, that they've not been performing as well, or that things have not been going as well. And I know that, I mean, as an Apple user across many different devices myself, like even just today, actually, about an hour before I joined you on this show, I was having trouble getting my Skype to see all my various cameras because I had just updated my Mac OS, right? Mm-hmm. I had to go back and re-update it. And then my camera showed up. Little things like that have been cropping up in Apple devices over the last several years since Steve Jobs left us. So you have to wonder, is Apple now looking for another superstar? Are we going to see Barra show up at Apple? Xiaomi might be a really good test run or audition for somebody like him and somebody like Apple. Yeah. We've heard rumors that Jony Ive is looking to head out and has one foot at the door at Apple. So if I was a betting man, that's what I would put my money on.
Yeah. I mean, from the high-profile kind of position that he comes from, you have to know that if he's leaving for something, it's going to be something compelling. Pure speculation, but we had covered on the show a couple of weeks ago Andy Rubin, who's the creator of Android. That he is reportedly, and he hasn't been with Google for a couple of years. He's got his own thing going on now. He's reportedly working on a new smartphone adventure of his own, that he's focusing apparently on artificial intelligence. He considers that AI is the next major computing platform for the next 10 to 15 years. And as such, the rumors basically say that he's working on a smartphone platform designed with that in mind, with AI as the core of that platform. I could totally see them reuniting because they work together at Google. Andy's back here in the Bay Area doing this new thing. He's moving back. I'm just saying, maybe total speculation. It's not based on anything, but those two facts alone make me wonder if there's going to be something that we see from that. Because that, like you say, that could be Xiaomi could have been a really good trial run for Andy's next big thing. Why don't you come and help me make this a success? Like we did with Android.
Yeah, I think we have the making of a gentleman's bet here. I will bet you a water bottle that.
There we go. I'll bet you my water bottle that I use every single day. I know that you want it. It's a really great one. It's missing the little handle.
Then it just gives it more charm. That's right. Exactly. All right. Exactly. I don't have mine to hand, but I'll show it to. I'll send you. I'll tweet a picture of it. Okay. I'll Twitter a picture. It's shiny and red. It's nice. It's a good water bottle.
Sounds nice. Yeah, I trust that you have a water bottle and that you'll give it to me when I win. Up next, we're going to chat a little bit about Russ's latest project and just kind of dive in a little bit about the challenges of crowdfunding a film, because that's exactly what you did here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, let's take a minute to thank Blue Apron. They're the sponsor of this episode. Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone, all the while supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest quality standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with fresh, high-quality ingredients. That's going to allow you to cook delicious home-cooked meals. Every meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients that can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. So you're going to save your time, you're going to save your money. When you're shopping at the grocery store, you're spending 60% more than what you get with Blue Apron. And if you spend a lot eating out, or you're getting your groceries at high-end grocery chains, you're spending a lot of money. You can now spend under $10 per person for healthy home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. Customize your recipes every week based on your dietary preferences and choose a delivery option that fits your needs. There's no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Blue Apron delivers to 99% of the continental U.S. and sets the highest quality standards for their community of over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the United States. Blue Apron not only supports a more sustainable food system, it supports happy and healthy families. Cooking together builds strong family bonds, and research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. So you're going to get new recipes, which they create every single week. Blue Apron's culinary team puts those all together. They're not repeated within a year. Here's just a few examples. Spicy shrimp and Korean rice cakes with cabbage and furikake. There's pork chops and garlic piccata with scallion rice and spinach. Mushroom and chipotle pepper enchiladas with lime, sour cream. Also hoisin chicken steam buns with broccoli and marinated carrots. It's close enough for dinner time right now that I'm starting to get really, really hungry. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. That is blueapron.com/TNT. And we thank Blue Apron for their support of Tech News Today. Blue Apron's a better way to cook. All right, so Russ, back in August, I believe it was, you joined Megan and I on this show. We discussed your documentary project, Stage of Development, Indie City Edition. So first and foremost, for those who missed that, tell us a little bit about the documentary itself.
Yeah, sure. So Stage of Development is a web series concept that I kicked off a couple of years ago, actually. More or less a spiritual successor to the work that I did at Polygon on a series we called Human Angle, which is a sort of human exploration of people who make video games, right? And Stage of Development follows in that similar vein. Who are the people who make video games? A lot of people don't even realize that there are real people who make those games and, who have artistic ambitions and who study for years, for example, to make video games. Who are these people? Why do they make video games? What drives them? And then how has making video games impacted their lives? These are, as a longtime video game reporter, those are the type of stories I always felt drawn to, right? Video games come and go. Every year there's many more video games and the technology is constantly changing, and there's lots to talk about there, but I have always found the human side of it, right? Who are these people? What are they doing? What is it like to make a video game? What are the challenges they face? You only hear about that when it makes the news in a negative way, like people getting overworked or when something bad happens. But just sort of the everyday struggle of sort of bending this constantly changing technology around creative ideas. That's fascinating to me. So I've wanted to dig into that, and I wrote a book, How Video Games Are Made, about the 16 months I spent embedded with one particular video game company and making their game. And as I mentioned, I made the videos I made for Polygon more or less about that. And so when I went independent a few years ago, this was the first thing really I thought to do. And I've been working on it ever since.
And you've got a pretty big milestone coming up here. You mentioned right before the show. When can people actually finally see the airing of this?
Oh, yeah. So Stage of Development Indie City, I should finish answering your question, is Chicago, right? So I wanted to go to Chicago. I know a lot of people there. I know a lot of the projects there. And so I did. So we spent a couple of weeks in Chicago meeting all not all, but a lot of indie video game developers. We went to the Indie Video Game Festival Bit Bash. We went to DePaul University, which is where a lot of the people who end up in the indie video game scene in Chicago go to school. They have a whole program designed to give people the tools that they need to become successful in a wide variety of video game scenarios, working for a studio or working independent. So we got to know a lot of the video game makers there in Chicago, the people making the We Are Chicago game, that what you're seeing right now, Young Horses, who made Octodad. They're working on their next game. And we've been working on it since last year. We've been editing it. We had to go make another film in November, and then it was the holidays. So I'm really excited now to be able to say we have a date, and we haven't actually yet announced it yet. You're going to hear it here first, Jason.
What? What? Really? We get an exclusive?
You have an exclusive.
This never happens.
I know. We just decided today, and I was like, well, I'm going to be on Tech News today. Holy crap, I think we can do this.
All right, what is it? Lay it on me.
5-episode series, Stage of Development Indie City Edition, starting February 2nd.
Nice. And that's like 2 weeks away, maybe.
It's
right
2 weeks
there, right?
away.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's actually a little scary. It's a little scary for us.
That's got to feel so good, though, to have a date.
It feels great.
Yeah.
It really feels great because one of the games we covered they just announced their release date in February, so we have a really compelling reason to peg our release to that date. But it is a little scary because before we fully decided on the order that we'd be releasing these in, I just got to work editing the stories because I get excited about the stories and I do most of our story editing, and I just picked one randomly and then started going, whichever one I wanted to work on next. And it turns out I edited them backwards. So we're still working on what will be the first episode. So it's a little awkward timing, but we're pros.
You still gave yourself 2 weeks before the first episode is airing. So you're coming down to the wire, but
yeah, we'll make it work.
Sometimes that's the best way to work. It's like set yourself the deadline. You'll reach the deadline if you just put yourself out there. So obviously, you mentioned it. You launched this project on Kickstarter, and the progress went really well. Obviously, it was funded. I mean, what did it take? I don't know. How is Kickstarter for kind of like a creative project like this as a platform used to crowdfund a series like this?
Kickstarter is I'll tell you that. Let me put it this way: the Kickstarter campaign we ran for Stage of Development Indie City Edition was the most successful thing I will never do again. It is scary. It is heart-wrenching. It is and very popular. Kickstarter campaigns can get very big very quickly because it has a very wide platform. Yeah. A lot of people pay attention to it, and you can generally count a percentage of your goal just based on people scrolling through Kickstarter, right? They're able to very widely disseminate news of your thing, and if you have enough of a built-in audience, or your thing is just visceral enough that the amount of people who are going to see it natively through Kickstarter will be enough to put you over the top, then you can do very well with Kickstarter. But there's so many things that there's a reason why, like, how to succeed on Kickstarter is like a really popular category for like ebooks and videos and seminars, right? Because there's a lot of tricks. And even the people who will tell you they have it all figured out don't know all the tricks or don't have it all figured out, or, things may change because audiences are always changing. And what an audience may want, for example, what potential backers may want from a coffee brewer, for example, is going to be different from what people want from a movie, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think that I think there are other platforms. In fact, and one thing what people don't tell you is when you run a Kickstarter, you get harassed, man. People will follow Kickstarter campaigns and say, hey, do you have a composer, for example, or like, hey, do you want to pay me money for this add-on that we do for Kickstarter campaigns, right? People want you to pay them for advertising. People want you to pay for all kinds of little things they don't necessarily really need. And if you have a Kickstarter campaign that fails, like I actually did, there are other services like Indiegogo, for example, that will come to you and say, hey, come to us. We have things Kickstarter didn't have. Oh. And I think in some ways, Indiegogo, I'm just naming it as an example, but in some ways, some of these other platforms are actually better for some projects. In fact, I was very seriously considering going with Indiegogo for my Indie City campaign. But another thing about Kickstarter is, like, if once you succeed with one, you have a certain shine about you. But if you fail at one, you have that sort of negative shine, right? So I didn't want to immediately go to another platform and try again without having first succeeded on Kickstarter. So there's just all kinds of things to consider in terms of pricing, reward tiers, how you communicate with your backers and the general audience. It really is. I know other smarter people than I have said this, but it really is a full-time job to run a Kickstarter campaign, and it can be pretty tense. Yeah, exactly, and you need a lot of people on your side to pull it off. Unless you got a lot of time, I suppose. Now, you mentioned this, so why don't we talk about this a little bit? You always run the risk, obviously, of misreading the crowd as just one example when it comes to crowdfunding a project. You had the Kickstarter campaign before stage development that didn't reach its funding goal. What were some of the lessons that you learned from that project that led to kind of leading a successful campaign, doing something along the same, similar lines? Yeah, I think the biggest lesson we learned from that first Kickstarter was that I was asking for too much money.
It's hard to know where to set that, though. You know, I mean, especially when you consider the cost of what is required to do the thing that you need to do. Like,
right,
that's a really difficult thing to just pull out of thin air and be like, this is going to be achievable.
Right. Yeah, and I think the challenge that I acknowledged I had with the first campaign was that I had no data. I had always worked for large media companies. I had worked for large and small budgets. You know, I can put together a production on almost any budget, but I had never asked people for money to fund a thing. It had always been there, you know, available through sponsorship or just whatever budget we had to work with at the various companies I worked for. And in that respect, I also didn't know how much of an audience I personally had, right?
Right.
Like I was aware of the audiences I had at the various companies I'd worked for, but I knew that I was going to have a fraction of that. I just didn't know what that fraction was. So, so I was able to say I can expect, you know, a hypothetical backer to invest, you know, or to be willing to spend X amount of dollars for a piece of content that is X amount of minutes long, right? and Y quality, right? Like I had those algorithms and I could put those together, and I still feel like with that first campaign, I was spot on with some of those numbers. The problem was I didn't know how big that audience was that was going to flock to just the work that I was doing. I didn't know how much reach I was going to have personally, and to a really big extent, I didn't know how much money I was going to be able to raise outside of that. Right, so those are adjustments that was a hard lesson to learn, but those were adjustments that I was able to make for the second one, and I think in addition to money and just statistics, I had a different idea of what my audience might want than I think that first Kickstarter campaign was the show I wanted to make with the budget I wanted to have to make that show, right? And in the absence of any data pointing in a different direction, that's what I ran with. But it became very clear running the campaign that for a crowdfunded film, we were looking at a different budget and we were looking at a slightly different focus. It needed to be a little more specifically about one thing or one type of person than about the lots of different people in different directions around video games than what I originally envisioned. And which is fine. We made those adjustments, and I'm still very happy with the film I got to make, and the Kickstarter succeeded, which is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, people got behind it. So happy ending, I guess.
Yeah, the point that you're bringing up as far as like, you know, you have the vision in mind of what it takes to do what you want to do, and then there's what the crowd, which ultimately they're the really important ones, because without their support you may or may not be able to even do it. So case in point, we have a story about phone company ZTE, who back in October announced that they wanted to crowdsource a new phone design. Users would vote on their favorite unique feature set for the phone. At CES, ZTE officially unveiled the Hawkeye. It's a $199 handset that has special hands-free control features. Those were the things that were voted most by the crowd, including eye tracking for control of the device with your eyes, along with, wait for it, the ability to stick the phone to walls. Literally, you could, because that's what people voted for, apparently. ZTE put the crowdsourced phone on Kickstarter, thinking, we had all these people that were involved in crowdsourcing the features and they voted and everything. This is going to be, I don't know if they necessarily thought it was going to be a breeze, but they set their goal at $500,000. And I mean, after 2 weeks, the phone is utterly stalled at around $35,000, which just kind of goes to show, like, you may think you have it. You may think you understand the people that would be the ones that would be motivated and inspired enough to commit to your project, and in the end, you just never really know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think they're learning. I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of people who have a lot of ideas about Kickstarter campaigns, and many of them are absolutely spot on. I think the one common theme across all the different things that I've read and all the different people that I've spoken to who have had successful and unsuccessful Kickstarter campaigns is that communicating is key.
Yeah.
You're just going to get more backers if you're clearly communicating a concrete idea and explaining exactly where the money is going, exactly what people are going to get when they back, not just with the final product, but what they get in terms of the different tiers, why they should get one tier versus another tier, and really spending the time and putting in the effort to learn how to effectively communicate all that to the audience and bring them into it so that they feel like they're not just buying a product, but they're contributing to a movement, right?
Yep.
Helping bring something into the world that wouldn't happen without their generosity. And I have found, and that was, a major adjustment that we made with our second stage of development Kickstarter. We were able to introduce a much more clear concept to people. We were able to show them concretely what they were going to be getting and what their dollars were going to. Yeah. And, we allowed them then to jump on and feel better about giving their money to me instead of something else, Yep. So it seems like ZT is stuck in that loop a little bit, and maybe they're in a situation where they might have to change what people are getting. That's never good. Never good in a crowdfund.
It really does sound like that might be what they have to do in order to make something happen, or let this lapse and then come back with a new and improved one with better specs, or I'm not even quite sure. But back to your project real quick before we move on. So February 2nd,
February 2nd.
People who are interested in following along and catching this, what can they do?
They, you can go to bit.ly/stage of development, and that will take you to the Flying Saucer Media page, where you can learn all about this stage of development project. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel from there. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will get the videos as soon as they're available. First one coming February 2nd. And follow me at Russ Pitts. I'm tweeting pictures from our Slack, right? What we're talking about. I just laid this on my guys today, my composer and my post effects editor. I just laid them on today. So, hey, how would you feel if we had a February roll date, right? That's a Slack conversation.
To which they said
hilarious. ...
and you said, good, I'm glad you agree.
That's right. Good meeting, guys. So
Excellent.
February 2nd it is. Let's do it. bit.ly/stage of development. And it'll be weekly starting February 2nd, 5 episodes. So it's going to be a good February.
Well, congratulations. That's a big deal. Everybody check it out, and we'll be following that as well. Cool stuff. Thanks for announcing that on this show. Appreciate that. Elizabeth Whitmire wrote into TNT at twit.tv with a comment to say, regarding your coverage of dash buttons in episode 1688, yes, they do cost $4.99. This is Amazon's dash buttons. You push the button and then it orders the thing like, toilet paper or whatever. She says, yes, they do cost $4.99, but whenever you set up the button and place your first order using it, they credit you $4.99 back. So it's like you're getting the button for free. It's just made it so easy and convenient to order stuff. It's actually saved me money, because if I go to the Amazon website to search up what I need, I'll likely order more stuff that I actually don't need. And the same goes if I go to a store. I'm too vulnerable to impulse buying. I'll be looking into getting a customized button for sure, because there are products I routinely order, but some are brands that don't have dash buttons. I had a couple of people correct me on this, and it was in my notes. I swear I said it, but I guess I didn't. So that's a really important note, because it basically is free. You pay for the device. First time you use it, you get that money credited on your order. I just don't know if I need a one-purpose button. What about you, Russ? Do you need a dash button in your life, or do you have one already?
I don't, and I'm really torn on it, because on the one hand, I'm like, I'm with Elizabeth there. I think when I go to Amazon, I frequently fall into that trap where I actually feel a little awkward just buying one thing. I feel like I have to pile it all in, get the 3 or 4 things that are currently in my saved for later cart. I don't know whether it's frugality, whether I want them to save money on shipping, or I just feel bad, having UPS, having people in a warehouse and an entire computer system and like an airplane and a UPS truck just to give me like a bottle of glue, right?
Yeah, right.
Or a canister of Tide. But on the other hand, those buttons are sick. They're really cool. Like they're candy colored, and you're just like, I'm out of Tide. Bing. So I don't know, man. I feel like for me, it's a slippery slope. If I get one, I'll have to get all of them, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
You can have a special wall in your house dedicated to dash buttons. I know.
I'd put them all over the place, man. They're like, oh, I'm out of hand lotion.
Then you'd have to go find your dash buttons. Where do I keep the hand lotion dash button again?
Yeah, it would just be chaos. Yeah. It's probably for the best that we not go there.
That's true. Up next, big changes at the FCC. But first, let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They are the sponsor of this episode. Not sure if you've done the whole mortgage process before, but if you have, then you would probably agree it's not the easiest process in the world, digging up all this information from all over the place, finding that bit of information, compiling it, basically giving the bank what they need in order to trust you with that mortgage. You need to do it because at the end of that rainbow is that house, what you're really shooting for here. But it takes a lot of jumping through hoops in order to get there. Rocket Mortgage can help you with that process. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, it's always obviously important to work with someone that you can trust who has your best interest in mind. And with Rocket Mortgage, you're going to get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. So you're not going to waste time searching through stacks of paperwork or old files. With Rocket Mortgage, you can securely share your financial information to get a mortgage approval in minutes. And you can even adjust the rate and the length of your loan in real time so you can make sure that you get the mortgage solution that's right for you. You can kind of play around with the numbers to see what's perfect fit for you. Whether you're looking to buy a home or even refinance your existing mortgage, you can lift the burden of getting a home loan with Rocket Mortgage. Skip the bank, skip the waiting, go completely online. That's quickenloans.com/TNT, quickenloans.com/TNT, equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support. TNT's fan of the day is Michael Lafrato on Twitter, who sent us this picture of TNT on his big screen at home. We get a lot of these actually, where it's just a picture of us on the largest screen in the world. And I'm amazed and flattered that you guys sit down sometimes at night and just watch it like it's a TV show. I love it. Michael, thanks for taking the time to snap the pic and send it in. We want to hear from all of you. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we're going to find it. Finally, and I promise not to get too political here because I know how everybody who watches the show feels about that, but this is absolutely one of those moments where politics and technology are intersecting. It's definitely worth mentioning. FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler, a proponent and driver of net neutrality, had resigned from the FCC last Friday. Today, President Trump announced that Ajit Pai will be Wheeler's replacement to chair the FCC. What does that mean? Pai is an opponent to network neutrality and a proponent for deregulation that he has said would lead to, quote, investment, innovation, and job creation. So what does that mean for the internet as we know it? Likely it's going to pave the way for a future where ISPs, Verizon, Comcast, other big ISPs can control the websites its users have access to, or even charge them more for access to certain sites they don't actually own. In other words, net neutrality, as we know of it right now and have gotten kind of used to it, will absolutely, at the very least, come under fire pretty significantly in the coming months as a result of this. People who are for net neutrality say that net neutrality is important. Otherwise, there's a reduction of consumer choice, restricting newcomers by allowing ISPs to act kind of like as gatekeepers. So stifling innovation. Opponents, people who are against net neutrality basically say that plenty of innovation existed prior to these rules. They didn't really exist before 2008 on the internet. And they say, everything worked fine up until then. Russ, I'm sure you have opinions on this. What do you think?
Yeah. I'm going to try as well to not get too political, but I don't think it's partisan to say that a lot of President Trump's policies are aimed at or will be beneficial to corporations.
For sure. Yeah.
I think that's a I think he would even agree with that if I asked him. So one has to consider this as also being beneficial to corporations, and I don't think that's up for debate either. Getting rid of net neutrality or deregulating net neutrality would benefit companies like the ISPs, where they could charge different rates. They could provide tiered services to different customers for different rates, and that's what they've been wanting to do for some time. I certainly understand that. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. Newer internet services that didn't exist before 2008 have put a lot of pressure on infrastructure. Most of the major carriers have had to upgrade their infrastructure. Google Fiber and other similar services are hoping to take pressure off of that, but laying all of that fiber on, and particularly in the last mile, as they call it, between the curb and your house, or the main thoroughfare in your house, is very expensive. So accommodating the growing demand for internet since 2008 or so has been expensive for these corporations, and their ability to ameliorate those expenses by raising costs or metering services, or putting in speed ramps that certain companies or media companies even could pay them to control, has not been an option because of net neutrality. So, the question then is this also going to be good for consumers, right? If you agree that it's going to be good for corporations and understand why they might want to do that and why they might feel they need to deregulate net neutrality, then is that also going to be good for consumers? And that's where the real debate, I think, is. And I don't know either. I certainly have personal opinions. I'm not generally a fan of the sort of trickle down theory of regulation or deregulation. I personally, as a consumer, have not often found that what's best for a corporation is best for me. I think we've certainly seen a lot of folks who run companies where they have a cost savings. They sort of hang on to that as opposed to investing in that. I tend to think that most of the really cool innovation that's happened in the internet space has been happening because it's a level playing ground, and people have to get noticed, or you can't just be the company with the biggest pockets and then expect you're going to get the most consumers out of that, right? By paying for a different speed of internet, or a different fast lane of internet, like they've been calling it. The net neutrality opponents have been calling it. So you get really cool services like Uber and, I want to say Skype, now owned by Microsoft, Snapchat, for example. All these services that I don't think would exist without the net neutrality laws that we have today. But I could just easily be wrong about that. I think once the larger companies aren't able to compete because they don't have that kind of innovative drive, if they are able to compete, will they come up with the same innovative strategies? Will they, will the jobs created by them expanding their services in that way be enough to offset the possible downsides? I don't know. I mean, that's not where I generally fall on these types of issues, but it's a debate worth having.
Yeah, for sure. And a debate that's going to continue on for the next few years. I mean, basically a reversal of what we've seen in the last few years with net neutrality laws and regulation. I mean, this is going to take years in order to, complete, let's say, that kind of the dismantling of this. There's the rulemaking, there's litigation around that, there's any challenges that are set forth. At least I'm assuming and I'm guessing, based on what I've read, this isn't the kind of thing that you flick a switch and, hey, all right, it's totally deregulated now suddenly. I mean, it's going to take a while, and there will be challenges. It's just, I suppose we'll see where that goes. Personally, it feels like it would make it very difficult for like the next YouTube, let's say, to become what YouTube has become, if the big players in the industry are controlling who gets access to what and for how much. It kind of eliminates a little bit of that spontaneity, and I don't know. I guess we'll see where that heads. But Pi has voted against net neutrality rules as an FCC commissioner, and has a rich history of being very anti net neutrality. So I think this is what we're in store for, at least in the short term, in the near term, and I don't know. Be very curious to see where it ends up. Hopefully, those of you watching and listening didn't feel like that was overly political. I think it's totally applicable to the internet that we all use, whether you sit on one side of the political spectrum or another, it's going to affect us all in some way. I think it's important because of that.
Yeah, the internet is tricky because it's technology wrapped around media and content creation and now services. You have all kinds of services that are in. My home alarm system is actually internet connected, right?
Yeah,
so it's like in some respects, right? So my home alarm system is reliant on internet access, and I think it's sort of internet sort of straddles that line between public utility and entertainment service. So there's a lot wrapped up in it. So it's not going to be instant. Whatever happens is going to have a lot of there's a lot of stakeholders, so it's going to need to go through a lot of checks. I don't think either way. Well, one would have thought that it was a slam dunk already, but now it seems that net neutrality is up for a debate again. So clearly, this is going to be something that's going to get a lot of debate and a lot of votes and a lot of litigation. So should it be resolved within whatever the length of Donald Trump's reign as president? Is up for debate as well. I think we're going to be debating this for some time.
For sure. Appreciate your insight on that, Russ, and just everything. I really appreciate you joining me today and filling in for the irreplaceable Megan Maroney, who will be symbolized. I'm not sure she's going to really enjoy being symbolized by a water bottle, but it's what I have.
My water bottle. That's my water bottle.
We'll see about that. Russ Pitts, flyingsaucermedia.com, Russ Pitts on Twitter. Any final words of wisdom, thing that you want people to make sure they know before you leave?
You know what? We talked a lot about my project, which is great. I work for another company called Take This. It's a nonprofit aimed at helping people with mental health issues. We're going to have some big announcements coming within the next week, actually. I want to say this week. Another thing that was decided today, keep an eye on takethis.org. Some big news coming out there. And in that vein, we touched on politics a little bit, and I think the reason why it's even more important now to be careful about how you talk about politics, because it's a lot of people are really sensitive to what's happening politically these days. There's a lot of debate, controversy. Just be kind to each other is what I want to say. Whether it's over exploding phones or Sprint's new music service, or its new, yellow scarfed, can you hear me now, guy, or politics or net neutrality. Just remember that, we're all in this together, and try to be kind.
Fantastic. Completely agree. Russ Pitts, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right. We'll have you back soon. Tomorrow's guest is going to be Ron Richards, my friend from another show who comes on this show occasionally. Looking forward to that. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC at twit.tv/live. Be part of the show by emailing us, tnt@twit.tv. Leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. And find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV. Twit fans, we want to hear from you. Please take our new audience survey. It really only takes about 2 minutes to finish. It's a survey that helps us with a general idea of who you are, who our audience is, so we can provide better programming for you. It also helps us pick advertisers that we, can ultimately feel confident that you'd be interested in. Many of you take your privacy very seriously. We promise always to protect that. We do not identify you in any way in the survey. So if you want to help out, totally optional, head over to twit.tv/survey, and we would appreciate your feedback. We appreciate knowing where you're coming from. Find all the ways to subscribe to this show at twit.tv/TNT, and if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to our technical director, Brian, pushing the buttons. Thanks to Burke for helping out here in the studio. Thanks to Kevin for editing the show and hopefully making us look good. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, everybody. That's the high five that I have. High five.
High five. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm so bad at this. I can't. Oh, wait. There's my. Oh, there we go.